That's not what happened in the movies. That's not what people talk about. And so when it happens to you, the very fact that you did not prepare yourself for it makes you vulnerable. So you prepare yourself. You understand the dynamics and you prepare yourself for it. It can be a little bit hard. It's not something overwhelming. It's not something that you can't deal with. But if you thought about it, you'll be all right. Let me give you a scenario. You're a law enforcement officer in a town called Jonesboro, Arkansas. You're traveling back behind the West Side Middle School, and just on the other side of this little low hill, you hear shots coming. You bail out of your unit and you race to the top of this hill, and down at the bottom of the hill, 25 yards in front of you, are an 11 and 13-year-old boy laying on their bellies, gunning down little girls packed together on the playground. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to shoot them. You're going to shoot them, and it'll be all right. You can do it. But the fact that you have anticipated that possibility means that when the time comes, you won't react out of fear. You'll react out of planning and preparation and competence. And it will actually reduce the probability that you'll do the wrong thing by virtue of the fact that you've anticipated it, because you faced that possibility ahead of time. Over half of all law enforcement officers die in what kind of situations? Low visibility environments. And you've got to be trained to return fire on a muzzle flash. And if you haven't been trained to identify and return fire on muzzle flashes, then we're not preparing you for the single most dangerous potential that lies before you. Learn to see, wham, wham, that muzzle flash, return fire, and keep shooting at that muzzle flash until the guy standing behind there has sucked up 2 or 3 rounds and decides, okay, he's done his job. Do people tend to conveniently, obligingly fall after you've hit them one time? Not necessarily. You want to fire until they no longer represent a threat. Now, in a heightened state of arousal, what will happen is you will fire till they drop. An extraordinarily well-trained, competent individual will be calm enough to fire until the gun drops. But that is rare, and that takes an extraordinarily high level of training. We want to talk about inoculation against getting hit, surviving gunshot wounds. All things are ready if our minds be so, according to Shakespeare and Henry V. And our minds have to be prepared for that terrible eventuality in which we actually get hit. The bottom line, don't panic. The fact that you are alive to know that you're shot is good. Think about it. In Knoxville, Tennessee, one of the officers there was a partner of a young officer who had just been in a shootout and is currently in the hospital. He had been hit 2 times in an engagement. He dropped down, and he remembered in the academy they had taught him that if you're alive to know that you're shot, you're okay. And that's what he said he remembered, and he was able to pull his weapon out and return fire and do what needed to be done, which was kill the guy who just shot him. Don't dwell on your vulnerability. Focus on your ability, your options, your training, your resources. Focus on the mission. A goal is what you need to keep on going. I present to you 2 clear-cut missions. Once you've been hit, there are only 2 options, more or less. Number 1, if the enemy no longer represents a threat to you, they're fleeing, they're leaving, they're going away, they've dropped their weapon, whatever the case may be. Or if you have good covering fire, such as in a SWAT environment where there are other people to take care of the bad guy, number 1, your option is to get yourself out of there and get to medical support. Don't make your friends have to go expose themselves to fire to come and get you. Get yourself out of there and get support. Number 2, worst case and most common scenario. Anybody who has it in them to shoot you once, by definition, has it in them to shoot you again. And most common, what happens is we've got an officer by himself or just him and his or her partner. They're in that situation, and what happens is they've been hit once and they drop. Now, you have got to train yourself, condition yourself to keep going. You've got to visualize yourself getting hit and continuing to fight. The goal is to tap the power of adrenaline and to say to yourself, now I will keep going. Real world situations. An undercover narcotics agent just made a buy from the bad guy. All of a sudden, the bad guy pulls out a gun and begins to shoot. This officer says, I pulled out my weapon, I started firing at this guy. I always thought when you shot somebody with a .45, they just kind of flew away. He says, I had to shoot this guy 5 times before he dropped. I shot him 3 times before he was even conscious of the fact that I was shooting at him. Later, on another day, in another engagement, that same officer was shot. He was down on the ground, and he said, as they were coming to me to kill me, I said to myself, get up, get up. If he could do it, I can too. And that's the goal of the matter. How many gangbangers have you ever heard of that sucked up half a dozen 9mm rounds and kept on going? The goal is to understand that if they can do it, I can too. And the way to get yourself into that mode is to visualize yourself getting hit and continuing to fight. Do it right now. Visualize yourself getting hit. Visualize bullets sinking into your body and you continuing to drive on. That becomes the goal. One officer, he'd been shot twice. One round went through the lung, and the other round was in the thigh and hit the bone. He was laying in the back of the bus trying to process what's happening to himself. He's got this kind of existential philosophical debate about why doesn't the one in the lung hurt and the one in the leg hurt so awful bad? And in the midst of that, he suddenly realizes that, hey, I've got other things to worry about because the SOB who just shot him is coming down the bus to finish him off. And he says, I'm not going to die in this dirty bus. And that's one of the great survival mechanisms, is just to burn it into your soul now, the steely will that says, I will continue. And any SOB who puts a bullet in me is going to get one back, no matter what, to the utmost of my ability, within the limits of my legal ability. What can you expect? One of the things to realize is this. As a general rule of thumb, bone hits hurt. But no one dies of bone hits. On the other hand, tissue wounds may not hurt. Blood loss. Your body right now has approximately 1.5 gallons of blood. You can lose 40%, over half a gallon, without losing consciousness. Stand out on an outdoor range and take a half a gallon of strawberry milk. Pour a half a gallon out on the ground. Glug, glug, glug. Take a look at it and recognize the fact that that's how much blood you can lose and continue going. Don't let a little blood loss slow you down. Realize that's how many blood the bad guy can lose and keep going too. All of these are two-way streets. Develop now the resolve, the will to win. Keep going until after medical help arrives. If you are alive and stable enough to be transported, you have well over a 90% probability of making it, if you can hang on that long. There is a statement that was written on the wall of a bunker in Saigon. A very profound statement. It says, you have never lived until you've almost died. For those who fight for it, life has a flavor the protected can never know. Cherish that flavor, relish that flavor, and never, never, never give up. We talk about getting shot as maybe the most stressful thing, but let me cover another possibility very quickly. The kind of thing that has a propensity to stress people out more than anything else is being in combat with your spouse or maybe with your children. Think about that reality. When I was teaching in North Carolina, a police chief from a small town told me a story about what had happened to him. One of his officers gets a call, and essentially the local town nut is in his house, has fired a shot. So the officer goes to respond, and he calls for backup. The chief is in his personal vehicle with his wife with him. He has a radio, and he calls and says, I'll come back you up. He's the only one in that part of the town. The officer parks in front of the house. The chief is kind of around the corner with his wife sitting there where she can see across several yards and can see the front yard of this house. He goes to catch up with his officer. His officer walks up to the door just a few steps in front of the chief. And as the officer walks up to the door flies open and a man with a .30-30 comes out and puts a bullet through the officer's chest, kills him on the spot. The chief hurls himself off to the left and a bullet shatters his right shoulder and begins arterial bleeding. The chief says, I scramble and I roll and these .30-30 rounds are whizzing around my head. Wham, wham, wham. Chunks of bark are flying from this tree that I'm getting cover from. He says, I reached out with my offhand and I get my weapon out. The chief says, I know that I'm going fast. He says, I take the gun with my left hand, I brace it on the ground, and I empty the magazine through the wall where I know the guy is. Well, it worked. He hit the guy. Hit him in the thigh. The guy lays down. And he's bleeding to death. But so is the chief. What saves the chief's life? His wife. As soon as she heard the shots, she gets on the radio, makes an immediate, calm, professional call, tells what their location is, tells what the situation is. The officers are able to come in and recover everybody appropriately. The reason why all of that happened, that this chief is absolutely convinced, is because he had prepared his spouse for the very worst case scenario. If you carry a weapon off duty, you have got to recognize the potential of being in combat with your spouse. And what you've got to ask yourself is, am I prepared for that?